Are you cold?
No,
I have a blanket on me, and it's wonderful.
that's weird.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast, where we discuss the world of film from a fresh angle. And now your host, Robert Yaniz Jr.
Welcome to the Crooked Table Podcast. This is Rob. On this show, we like to talk to fans and critics, basically bridging the gap between movie lovers from all walks of life and focus on the positive side of going to the movies. The whole point is to connect with this art on a personal level, to find the things we love about it. And there's so much divisiveness and negativity out there, especially on, social media and all that stuff, that what I try to do with this show is focus on what we love about the movies by bringing on a different guest every episode and have them talk about a film of their choice, what it means to them, why they love it, and just basically hash it out whether that film has held up over the years, if it's a classic from decades ago, or if it's a newer release that just resonates with them on an emotional level. So today we're joined by Kai Yaniz, my wife and frequent guest on this podcast, who's actually on the previous one, where it was really the last episode was kind of episode 0 of this new format of the Crooked Table Podcast, where it was really just me talking about a movie that I like. And she was more just my sounding board in the previous episode. But today we're going to be talking to Kai about a movie that she really loves. So, Kai, welcome back to the Crooked Table Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me, Rob. It's always good to be back.
Well, obviously, since we're married and you mean better than everyone, and I am basically still kind of getting the feel for this new format, I wanted to make sure to have you as the first official guest on this new version of the show. So, let's, as far as, normally this is the part of the podcast where we talk about how we know each other, but if people can listen to the previous episode, we've been together several years, we've been married for a few, we have a child together, we have a little toddler, a little young daughter, and everything, so I think we can kind of bypass that part. So tell me a little bit tell the people a little bit about yourself and what you have going on.
Well, I work full time at a money remitter, and I do that 40 hours a week, and then on with my side projects, one of the things I work on is passive income, and I've been working on passive income for the last couple of years, where I've now written 2 books. The first book is called Credit Tips of a Money Guru, and that was published, self-published, maybe 2 years ago now. And then most recently this year, I wrote my memoirs of my trip to China and Australia called Becoming Version 2.0 that just kind of talks about those experiences and my journey to getting to the now. And both those books can be found on Amazon. And I also have a digital planner that I created that can be found through Etsy. That's more of like a career planner and for motivational purposes. So just really passive income, always working on something.
And since this is obviously a media format, podcasting, you should tell people a little bit about you. You have a YouTube channel, you have videos you do every week. Tell people a little bit about that. How long have you been doing that, and what's kind of your goal there?
Oh, well, I have a YouTube channel. It's really just under Kai Yaniz, and it started last fall, and it was more just a channel to have inspirational snippets that I call Kaiisms. And what spurred that is I know that me and you and a friend of ours was talking about how I would be really great at filming YouTube tirades of all the things that piss me off. Because I guess I'm really amusing and have fun facial expressions. I don't know. Well, the more I thought about it.
I can vouch for that.
The more I thought about it, and with our current climate, I really thought it was best just to put more positive things out there. And ultimately, I feel like a lot of inspirational things to say. So I created a YouTube video, and for now, it's just to hold myself accountable to do it every week and to put something good out there. And who knows what's going to happen? It's been a year, and who knows? I mean, maybe I'll get worldwide fame someday, or maybe I won't. All I know is I do it for me and for the little people.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. The whole point, I mean, obviously with this podcast, is really a labor of love. And I think if you're going to do anything creative, whether it's a podcast or a video or, writing, a novel or whatever, it has to start from a personal place. And whether it takes off and you end up making a lot of money from it, or it's just a hobby on the side, I think it's really important to get that personal satisfaction from it. And then everything else is just kind of a bonus at that point.
Exactly. Well, when about the YouTube channel, it's also a post on my bebold-bebrave.com website too, because just to give it more branding. And there's also affiliate sites on there as well. So just add that extra tidbit.
Yeah. Is that BE bold or B just a letter B?
Oh, it's BE bold.
BE bold -BE brave.com. So great. Yeah. So people that want to learn more about what you're all about can look that up. So today we're talking about a film that Kai chose. It's funny because I knew I wanted to have you be the first kind of official guest on this new version of the podcast, since you've done about 1 billion of these before with me, and we just didn't know what movie we wanted to talk about until during the recording of the previous episode. We were just like, we should just talk about that. So let's just go ahead and listen to a little bit of the audio from this week's selection, which is the 1995 film Clueless.
So, okay. Like right now, for example, the Haitians need to come to America. But some people are all, what about the strain on our resources? And it's like, when I had this garden party for my father's birthday, right? People came that did not RSVP. So I was totally bugging. I had to haul ass to the kitchen, squish in extra place settings, and people were on mismatched chairs and all. But by the end of the day, it was the more the merrier. And so if the government could just get to the kitchen, rearrange some things, we could certainly party with the Haitians.
So Clueless came out on July 19th, 1995, starts Alicia Silverstone as Cher Horowitz. I don't even think her name is actually said. Her last name is said in the movie. Who's just, your average according to the world of this movie, I guess.
I'm going to stop you. It actually was said in the movie.
Oh, did they say Horowitz in the movie?
Once, I think.
Very, very obliquely, I think, yeah. So
during her tardies scene.
You've seen this movie way more than I have, so why don't you explain, what is Clueless? Pretend I'm a person that has never heard of this movie. What is Clueless all about? And I guess, as coming from devil's advocate perspective, why should I care?
So Clueless is a modern retelling of the story Emma, which was written by Jane Austen. I haven't actually seen that movie or read the book, but that's actually what my mom told me. But so Cher Horowitz, she's rich, she's beautiful, she's popular, and she also has a really good heart, and she plays matchmaker, and she also wants to do a makeover, and she wants to do good, but kind of doesn't have any clue on how to do it.
Whoa,
and
mind blown.
Yeah, and it's just a fun movie because it's satirical, but it's also sweet. It's a comedy. It's a romantic comedy. It's about friendship. And it was starring new up and comers at the time, but now some of these people are household names. Maybe you all would recognize the name Paul Rudd, who is our current Ant-Man.
That's right.
So that was, I think, one of his first real roles.
The funny thing is, I feel like you and I, since we were just early days of our relationship, just dating, I feel like we've watched a lot of teen comedies just over the years. And a lot of them that you actually introduced me to. So I guess we should sort of segue into kind of our personal histories with this movie. I should mention, written and directed by Amy Heckerling, who's done a bunch of other stuff, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Look Who's Talking, European Vacation, and Vamps with Alicia Silverstone, which a few years ago, which we actually just watched a couple weeks ago for the first time. So, what is your history with this movie? When did you first see it? And what kind of place does it have as far as for you personally, and the cinematic lexicon of films that you admire and such?
Well, my history with this movie is I have seen it in the movie theater. I saw it with my mom and my sister back when it came out, and I wanted to see this movie so bad because the trailers made it look hilarious. The trailer where she comes to Cher comes down the stairs and her dad says, "What the hell is that?" She's like, "A dress." He's like, "Says who?" And she says, "Calvin Klein." He's like, "It looks like underwear." And it's like, and just ridiculous terms of speech there. He's like, "Oh, I totally paused." So the trailer really did me in, where I wanted to see this movie. And I think my sister agreed too when she saw it. So my mom just took us. I think we didn't have school that day. And we went there, and then we went to Dairy Queen afterwards.
Nice. Have you seen it a lot over the years, like since 1995? Since theaters?
Yeah. I've seen it so much that I can't really do it as much now. I haven't really tried, but I used to be able to quote the movie.
Oh, wow.
I've seen a lot. So it's, I don't know. It's just one of those movies I really enjoy every single time I see it.
Great. And I hadn't seen this. I mean, of course I was aware of it when it came out, but I was, 12-year-old boy. I'm like, it looks like a dumb girl movie you think when you're a stupid young boy, when you're a stupid kid. So I actually just kind of slipped under my radar. My parents just didn't introduce me to it for, they weren't as into movies as I am now. And, I didn't even see it until you introduced it to me. Was it 2011, 12? When was that?
It must
Pretty
have been.
early
It was
on,
one
I
of
think.
those prerequisite movies that I showed you, and then you showed me yours. So
That sounds a lot
prerequisite
dirtier.
movies.
That sounds like you showed me that and I showed you yours. That sounds kind of dirty. I'll
That
allow
was
it.
not intentional.
I'll allow it. So I hadn't seen this until early in our relationship, and I think I've seen it. I think we've seen it together maybe like 3 times or something. It's a good, like, we obviously we rewatched it about a week or so ago prior to this recording, just because I wanted to have notes and make sure that I was like in the mindset and had refreshed my memory of the film. But it is really like, it's a really good put on in the background in the living room, like while you're doing stuff on the computer, just because it does have that such a fun energy to it.
Yeah, and well, I think we both times recently we put it on in the background. Both times
in air quotes
we
in
end
the
up
background,
watching.
yeah.
Both times we just end up watching it all focused and paying attention. So it's. But one thing I didn't mention about seeing the movie with my mom and my sister is my mom really enjoyed it too. My mom was laughing out loud at this movie, so it made a fan of her too. But I don't think she's seen it since then.
Oh yeah, probably not. But it's also to me, I think, as somebody who has spent most of his life on the outside of the Clueless bubble, which now it's funny because now Mean Girls has the same kind of reverence that Clueless has as well, as far as female-led teen comedies. And I think that both of those movies, I don't know what it is about teen comedies. I think it's just movies like Porky's and things like that back in the 80s that kind of gave that genre sort of a bad name. Clueless kind of looks dumber than it is from the outside. You know what I mean? Like watching the trailers, you're like, oh, these superficial girls, like whatever. That looks dumb.
They talk like Valley Girls.
Yeah. And so you just getting little snippets of it. If you're not part of that target audience, you just think, okay, this is going to be a stupid like teen movie, like teen sex comedy or whatever. And it's totally not that. And I enjoyed it a lot when we first saw it, and every time we see it, I mean, I think I said something to you recently when we watched it, just kind of, like every time I see this, I appreciate the movie more, and you see more what it's going for, and you realize just how clever Heckerling's script is, and the way that she creates this sort of, in very many ways, kind of idyllic look at high school life, where even the like scrappy, like ne'er-do-well kids are still kind of normal in a way, you know what I mean? Like everything's just like shiny and sort of peppy, and the only problems are just like melodramatic, like this person doesn't like me, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Were you thinking that before, or did you think about that more when we saw the special features?
I think that
Amy Heckerling was talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, that helped to kind of put it in focus a little bit more, but it is very stylized. I mean, that's part of the appeal of it, in the way that something like Juno is very stylized, and that's another kind of teen comedy sort of, where the kind of creates its own language and its own like distinctive look, and a very quirky sort of aesthetic. And I think Clueless definitely has that going for it in its favor ultimately, but I could see how that could be off-putting to people that haven't really given the film a chance. Be like, oh, they see the poster with like Alicia Silverstone, like in the tight little dress, and them on the phones, and they're like, what is this? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess we should just go into a full-on kind of review of the film. Since this is a like 20-plus-year-old movie. There is no there is no spoiler warning at this point. It's pretty much all fair game. So you said to me that the soundtrack was really big for you growing up. I think you had it and then you like lost it or whatever, and then we recently got it for you like a couple years ago again. So what is it about the soundtrack that you like so much? And the reason I'm starting with that is because I mean, right from the beginning with Kids in America, it's kind of already setting the tone for the kind of movie that you're in store for.
It was during that time where soundtracks were key to a film, mostly, I guess, teen comedies. I mean, I'm sure there were other teen movies before it, but I feel like Clueless kind of really set it up with the soundtrack. And then She's All That had that song coming down the stairwell, and it just. Yeah, I mean, the Kids in America started it off, and I like the song Supermodel and Rolling with the Homies by Coolio was a big part of Clueless's film, and it just, yeah, there's always music playing. They go to a fraternity party and they're playing Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and it's just part of the film. It goes with the dynamic of the movie and the characters, and it's fun, and it's pretty cool that I own it again. And I don't think I lost it. I think I actually gave it away for some reason.
Oh,
maybe I broke it. I don't know.
You wore it out from playing it so much, maybe?
I'm not sure. Like, maybe it just got cracked. I don't know. Or maybe it's in my albums. I have this I have this CD case, these two big CD cases, and I haven't looked at them in a long time because I don't listen to CDs really anymore.
Right.
But maybe it's in there.
Nobody does except me. Yeah, you can tell we're people of a certain age, which is that we have we have all these things of these books of CDs. I have like giant booklets of CDRs with soundtracks and a bunch of different albums. So do you think that with the soundtrack and with the way they talk and the fashion, do you think that the fact that this movie is like so 90s, do you think that is do you think that's a benefit, or do you think that kind of holds the film back because it's sort of very dated in a way, but in a way that makes it feel like a time capsule rather than something that's sort of obsolete? You know what I mean? Like it makes it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
It somehow makes the story feel more timeless in a way. Like I guess what I'm trying to say is it feels like a movie set in the 90s that was made like in 2015. You know what I mean? It's just weird, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I was even gonna say it does feel like a time capsule. And one thing that we didn't mention is that this movie was even satired in Iggy Azalea's Fancy video, which I think to the kids now, they actually thought that was a made-up video, that it wasn't actually parodied from the Clueless movie. So that once again shows our age. But
God, that makes me. Well, I have to mention before we hold that thought. Remember on I think it was Lip Sync Battle, Alicia Silverstone did this song dressed back in her outfit from the movie.
That's so
great.
meta.
That was great.
Yeah, I think though, I mean, at least with Cher, Dion, and Ty, I don't think anybody in the 90s, any girls in the 90s actually dressed like that with the knee socks. I thought I could do that. Like, I wanted to dress like Clueless. This is how much I loved this movie, that in freshman year of high school, I'm about to start freshman year of high school, I bought white knee socks. I had weird wedge heels that were kind of small because I was still only 14. And I don't even remember, but I was trying to dress like that. But in all reality, I think even my friend said this. She's like, Kai, nobody actually dresses like this. So, yeah. So the ladies at least did not. Yeah. The ladies at least did not dress. Nobody dressed like that. And then the guys, I think the guys could have gotten away with it even now. And then when it comes to the guys with the pants around their waist, well, okay, that really did happen. Guys really were dressing that way. So, but I don't know. I think it works. It's similar to Friends too. I mean, Friends is dated, but it's also its own time capsule, and it's still relevant.
To be fair, I feel like this movie, because it is because it rides the 90s, what feels like 90s nostalgia, even though it came out in 95 in a way. Because it rides that so hard, I feel like this movie has aged better than Friends has, personally. But, that's coming from a How I Met Your Mother fan, not really so much with Friends. And it's interesting that you mentioned the thing about how this film influenced your fashion, because last episode we talked about Ace Ventura, and then I was like wearing like the crazy pattern shirts open like that, thinking that was the cool way to dress based on Jim Carrey's performance in that film. But it really, go ahead.
It's really something to be impressionable, isn't
Well,
it? Like,
I mean, I was 11 when Ace Ventura came out, and you were 12. We were 12 when this came out. So, that's the age when you're like, maybe that character's cool for a reason. Maybe I could try and be like that person.
Well, did you notice I said 14 freshman year? So
yeah,
there
you
was
were
like
obsessed with us for a while.
Well, it was I think it really the obsession started when it went on cassette on video, VHS. Back when VHS
we're old people.
Yeah, and I was going on a road trip with a friend of mine from school and her family, and I brought Clueless with me because it was my my movie, and I think it had just come out on VHS, and me and the family like watched this movie constantly while we were on this trip. So it started for me just watching the movie theater to now watching over and over and over again on VHS, to where when I went to started school freshman year, I had already watched it when I was 13 going on 14. That's right. It was I was about to be 14, and that's when I could go to school and actually quote the movie. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what happened from 12 to 13 or whatever.
But regardless, you were a teenage girl wishing you had the little computer program where you can like match up your outfits like she has in the beginning there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
definitely.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I just think that what we were talking about earlier about the movie feeling dated, if it did or not. The other thing is just the Clueless is about friendship and relationships and feeling clueless, and who can't relate to that, no matter what generation you're in, no matter what decade. I mean, we can all relate to that,
especially as teenagers. So how much of the I guess we can get to this right off the bat. How much of that, what you just described as far as like the teenage girl perspective being about like kind of really positive and not really catty and just very compassionate and stuff, how much of that do you think stems from the fact that this is a woman-directed film and written, that this movie was written and directed by a woman?
I think about it from two different perspectives. You mentioned Mean Girls earlier, and that was pretty much written for the screen by Tina Fey. And then you have Clueless was written for the screen by Amy Heckerling. And they're both true. I mean, in high school, I knew females that were very compassionate but still popular and wanted to do good by people. But I also knew the Mean Girls, and they actually both ran in the same clique. And I've noticed that sometimes the most popular girls are actually the kind ones, the ones that are nice to good and kind to everybody, not just their friends. And the rest of them, the mean ones, are the followers. And even in Mean Girls, even Regina, she was nice, but to your face, I guess.
Until she was writing in her burn book, but that's another movie entirely.
Right.
I also think Mean Girls. Go ahead. Were you gonna say?
Can I? Yeah, let me add, and let me finish my point. So Tina Fey and Amy Heckerling, I think in a way they do kind of have similar sensibilities. But with Amy Heckerling, maybe she wanted to be in a place of, one, I think she was writing from her own heart, her own personality, but also maybe just wanting to be a good role model, because she's not just a female, she was a mature female to the rest of the ladies on the cast. And maybe she just wanted to kind of put herself out there as the movie being a good role model for young girls out there to be like, not to be mean, but to be nice and good people. But on the same token, though, even Cher had mean girl moments, but she would kind of, hide some of that meanness.
Both movies
So
deal with. I think both movies have satirical elements to them. I think Mean Girls is obviously supposed to be more of a satire about like, girl world, how it would be solved in the animal world, that whole thing. And in this movie, I think they're both focusing on like popular girls, but in the case of Cher, she has like this. She's a valley girl, but she's actually like surprisingly kind of smart in a way that makes me feel like this movie was directly responsible for something like Legally Blonde. Like I don't feel like that movie would have happened unless this movie connected, which that was 2001. So this had already made its impact and everything, got spun off into a TV show and all that. Um, but she's also, she's kind of precocious in a way, but also naive. Like, and I think that's the whole point of the title is that she's well intentioned, but she doesn't really understand how the world works exactly. She's trying to find her way in that awkward adolescent stage between a girl and a woman. And I think that's probably the part of the character that Silverstone captures really well, kind of being in that position herself at that point early in her career.
I agree with you, but what part specifically are you saying that she came off smart?
Just like the way she carries herself, the way she understands certain things that she explains in class, but she explains it like not really understanding how to pronounce Haitians or Haitians,
Mm-hmm.
and using her own examples that sort of make sense if you think about it from her perspective. Again, like I said, watching it this time, I was really kind of very struck me how very much Cher reminded me of Elle Woods, in that she solves in that movie Elle Woods solves the case because of what is it, like perm maintenance or something. And that's how she knows, oh, this person couldn't have been the killer because of this or whatever. You remember? And,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in this movie, she's not dumb. She's sharp, and she's clearly very in tune with what's important to her at this age and what's in the world that she lives, even though she doesn't understand like really anything outside of the high school bubble that she's in, which is the whole interaction with Josh and how that kind of helps her mature and grow throughout the course of the film. But she lacks the knowledge, but she definitely has the capability. Like for early on, you can tell that she negotiates her way up to her grades and kind of impresses her father that way. Like she's very strategic and forward thinking about the things that affect her, but she doesn't understand how to look outward or see that, oh, maybe Ty likes the stoner kid that Cher just brushes off because that's the way she sees the world. She doesn't understand that there's other perspectives other than her own, and she has to kind of get taken down a peg, I guess, to kind of be humble to realize that she doesn't have all the answers.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Thank you. I don't
very
know.
Very well said.
Waxing poetic on Clueless.
Cliff notes.
So, and I think because of that, Silverstone really captures a lot of that complexity in what is ultimately kind of at times, pretty nuanced comedic performance.
Yeah, you can with Alicia Silverstone's performance, you can see the innocence with her, and that she, I think a lot of people know this by now. It's one of the main trivias, but Alicia Silverstone really did think it was pronounced Haitians, and Amy Heckerling thought it was adorable, and it kind of showed that personality, that naiveness of Cher, so they left it in,
right,
instead of changing the pronunciation to Haitians.
Yeah, and going back to Heckerling's direction for a second, like you can really tell that she has a vision for what she wants this movie to be, and along the way, like you can tell, like she actually weaves in references to classic films. She has the like 2001 like homage with the music, with the cordless phone, dun, 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 dun. And then there's actually the scene by the fountain when the water comes off with the lights and everything. That's actually a reference to the film Gigi. And then there's a Psycho reference. Remember I pointed out that I think it's a Psycho reference with the drain, kind of the hair dye, Ty's hair dye going down the drain, the red hair dye.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that until you said that.
You could tell she's a real cinephile, bringing her love of film and kind of putting everything she has into the story. And I think not only with Silverstone, I mean, obviously she's leading the film, but also like every supporting player across the board. I feel like it's a really strong supporting cast. who in this? I mean, we'll get to the whole Paul Rudd thing in a second. So I guess aside from him, who in the supporting cast really made an impact on you when you saw it the first time and kind of over the years?
I'd say Stacey Dash, who played Dion. I really liked her acting, and I was amazed that I think she was 27 when she was in this role, and I mean, she still looks beautiful today, and it looks like she's barely aged. But she actually made me want to watch the TV show, even though Alicia Silverstone would clearly not be on it, or Brittany Murphy. But she made me want to watch it because I liked Dion enough to want to see more of that character at least, and kind of see what they did with the TV spinoff.
I think,
and I like Breckin Meyer too. Who played Travis. Like, Breckin Meyer is so cute. Like, every movie role that he's in, he's adorable. So that's when I first became familiar with Breckin Meyer, and casually followed his career since then.
Well, not to Robot Chicken. You're not a fan of that, but that's kind of when he's very instrumental in that show.
That's why I said casually.
Okay, fair enough. I really like, my favorite moment of his is the whole like acceptance speech for the tardies. It's like, it took a lot of people to get me to be the tardy, or that whole thing. Like, what is it, the most tardies I think of everyone in the class or something like that.
Yeah,
that was great. I like that scene a lot. He's really funny, and then also really sweet with a lot of the stuff with Ty and the way he sort of rejected or ignored throughout a lot of that. I think is really cool. Also, another thing I wanted to mention is that because the film is sort of very much, as I said, told from Cher's perspective, from the teen perspective. Like, a lot of the parents and the teachers, they seem like they're like grumpy or like sticks in the mud, but really they're actually like in the movie. If you take a step back watching it as adults, as parents now, I'm like, wow, this is like good father. He's like really on top of trying to take care of his daughter, and like these are really good teachers. They're like really invested in their students' lives, and yeah, they're like how they have some snarky little remarks because it's a comedy and it's written for as entertainment, but like they're like. You know what I mean? Like you take for granted, like you watch some movies and the adults are like so over the top that it's just ridiculous. You're like, nobody acts this way. Nobody talks that way to their students or their kids. Like, who are these people? What world are these people living in? So the film is very stylized, and with the music and the colors and the outfits and all that. But like, I feel like the relationships, whether it's Cher and her dad or Cher and her teachers, and the whole like matchmaking thing with Wallace Shawn and Twain Kaplan, I think it all feels really grounded and believable in that way. And I think it's up to the parents to be like the straight men and women to make this world feel real, so that the teens can sort of run amok and be silly and deal with their shenanigans, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up the dad, because I remember when we watched it most recently, I'm just like, oh my God, he's such a good father. Like I love that conversation that her dad and Cher had in his office when she's talking about the boy that she likes, and he's like, I don't know if I want you to be such a stupid fellow like that if he can't see that you're the most beautiful girl in Beverly Hills, and just he's a very hardworking attorney with even a team under him, but he still manages to make time for those heart-to-heart talks with his daughter, and that's really sweet. And and I think that really helped her become a more well-rounded person and a kind person, because
very self-confident and like
it's great.
Yeah, I love Dan Hedaya, and he's been in like a million movies that I've seen. I think the first thing I saw him was in The Addams Family, where he plays like their slimy lawyer who's kind of double dealing behind the scenes and all kinds of stuff, trying to get their fortune. But yeah, he's a great character actor, and he's still really busy, I think, today too. So good for him. And then one of the special features when we watched it, I think he said something like this was one of his favorite films that he got to work on. It was like such a great experience.
And I wanted to say that too. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was even thinking about that with his role, that he seemed so heartfelt and genuine when he was talking in special features about how much the role meant to him, and so sweet. So.
Yeah, you get the vibe that everybody like that was in this film kind of had an inkling that it was kind of something special, like whether it was the cast or the crew, or obviously Heckerling herself, it was really her passion project. I think that comes across, just that's a kind of joyous feeling of like positive vibes and just like fun and lightheartedness that you get when you watch the film. So before we move on from the cast, and we're going to get into the whole Josh thing in a minute, we should also mention Brittany Murphy, R.I.P., who's really sweet and really kind of endearing in this movie, but also kind of bitchy at moments. She's got like attitude where she's like, "You're just a virgin who can't drive." And then
God,
she does that, and she does that eyebrow raise that really sells that line. We're like, "Geez, Cher's created a monster." I think Cher even says that at one point.
No, I feel like did she blame it on herself, actually? She called herself the monster, I believe.
Oh, I thought she was talking about
or maybe, yeah, she probably, maybe she was. Okay, I thought, for some reason, I thought she was talking about herself, like, that she was a monster because she was saying that, like, that she was mean to Lucy, and that Josh was mad at her, and that she made Ty act that way to her. So I thought she was saying she was a monster.
Oh, yeah. I didn't see it that way.
Everybody gets a different perspective.
Exactly.
Though, so.
Well, that's why the world of film from a fresh angle. That's the whole point. And we should mention how kind of woke Cher is. That when Elton is like kind of not even coming on to her, just like straight up like the thing with what is suck and blow, and then in the car, like that's straight up like sexual. She even says sexually harassed, but it's kind of almost sexual assault in a way at the party and in the car and stuff. And I think
yeah, for sure,
the movie really, she really stands up for herself. Whereas you watch like a lot of, I think the only things in this film that kind of don't age well are some of the things with Christian and some of the like homophobic comments that. Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. Donald Faison. What's his character's name? I forget now.
Oh, Murray.
Thank you, Murray. Where he's like, "Oh, Murray, Christian, he's a cake boy, a friend of Dorothy." That whole thing. That's a little bit insensitive, but coming from a teenager in the '90s, you're like, all right, whatever. So for the most part, the social politics of this movie are actually pretty solid, which is again in contrast with Ace Ventura, where that entire third act is like super transphobic and all kinds of offensive to the point of like, yeah, this would never happen now. Clueless actually feels like something that would have been made now about the 90s, as I mentioned.
Well, the thing though about that scene with Murray is that Cher never said anything like that.
Right, that's true.
About him, and they really, I think the film did a really respectable job of conveying Christian as a gay man, he wasn't really very flamboyant. He did dress well and stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And,
well, he had like a crush on Tony Curtis when they were watching Spartacus. It's like little stupid things, but nothing that was like where they're like, yeah, where it's just super over the top, like the 90s parody of a gay man.
Yeah, and Cher was more than happy to keep being his friend and hanging out with him, and just was realized, okay, well, one of the reasons I like hanging out with him is he likes to shop just like me, so we'll go shopping, and we're still friends, and and now it's definitely platonic. And I think that, and even Dion never said anything disrespectful. Ty was eternally grateful to Christian for saving her life at the mall.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So yes,
that was some crazy
I think.
moment.
So it's possible that maybe the Murray character, with what he said, maybe that was intentionally supposed to come off as homophobic.
Yeah, the movie isn't. I think you might be onto something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that maybe that was just that character because he wasn't comfortable with it. But the movie itself everyone else seemed completely fine with it and not disrespectful.
He also spends a lot of the movie calling Dion woman, which she doesn't like because that's sort of misogynistic. So I guess I think you have a good point. It's not like the movie's moral compass is coming more from Cher, not from the side character who's already been shown to be kind of ridiculous and out of touch with with reality and kind of is in his own ball of prejudices and such. So I think that's a good call. All right,
Thank you.
You've adjudicated this issue. So for Clueless, so I guess it's in the clear now.
Awesome.
So I think we need to go into the elephant in the film, which would be the whole thing with Josh and Cher. Now, it's basically what I'd like to call the stepbrother romance. So on whatever scale you want to choose, how weird is that? And how do you think the film executes it without making it feel gross by the end when they do end up together? Because it's this big romantic moment. It's literally like they end up together, and then it's the kind of denouement at the end of the movie.
Yeah, it is weird. Like if you weren't to watch the movie in its entirety and you just know about that, and maybe this is the reason some people have even watched this movie is because of that. It is weird, but they're not. But the thing is, they're not currently step siblings anymore. They didn't really grow up together. I think they even say being in the movie that the parents were only married for a short period of time, and the mom's already remarried. And I just think I think the way it was executed actually is more sweet than creepy. I think that Josh helped mature Cher a lot, as you said, and I don't think he even realized he liked her until what is that scene that she came down in her Calvin Klein underwear dress?
Yeah,
and
think so.
And spent more time with her, probably spending more time with her than he even really did when their parents were married.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, I think that's right. And to your point about, and I think you mentioned the fact that they didn't grow up together when we were watching it. The first thing that popped into my head is I'm a big fan of The Flash on CW, and those two, Barry and Iris, they did grow up together in the same house after his mom was murdered and his dad was arrested for it wrongfully. Joe West took Barry in from the age of 10 on. So they went through puberty living in the same house and then grew up and then got married and everything. So I think actually in a way that's kind of weirder. They grew up seeing each other, sort of brother and sister in a way, but he always kind of had a crush on her from before he was even adopted by Joe. So, and this movie does a lot of watching it, knowing that that's where it's going and having seen it a few times. The movie does a lot of work to smooth that out. So by the end, you're like, oh, they're happy together. Not like, I feel unresolved about this. Like you said, they do mention that Cher's dad was married to Josh's mom for probably very briefly, a few months or something. And then they knew each other, but they didn't have any kind of sibling relationship. There's also a lot of
other than contentious. It sounds
yeah. Other than that, I guess, and there's a lot of moments in the movie where you can sort of see Josh kind of noticing that there's more to her. You know what I mean? Like you said, I mean, like you mentioned the one with the dress, but there's little things where she's talking to Ty, and I think to Ty, right, trying to make her help her out or make her a better person, whatever. And Josh is sort of in the doorway, kind of rolling his eyes, oh, geez, she's so weird and funny, but also being kind of endeared to her and seeing that she's trying to grow up a little bit. And I think Paul Rudd's acting and his performance here are really understated, considering that comedy really became kind of his focus after this.
Yeah, so I guess in the beginning, probably from halfway, since Act 2, I guess we'd say that Josh was into Cher,
or seeing her in a different way, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, but Paul Rudd and his eyes, he has such beautiful, warm eyes, and I feel like this movie endeared everyone to Paul Rudd, and so for a long time I was wondering what Paul Rudd was doing because I hadn't seen him in anything, and so when he showed up in 40-Year-Old Virgin, I'm like, oh my God, Paul Rudd. I mean, I'm sure he was in other things.
He was in Friends and stuff like that, but movie-wise.
Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't really. Oh yeah.
Movie-wise, right. I don't think he was in anything that was super mainstream. He was probably doing smaller movies and things like that. I think it was probably Anchorman that really, because I'm not looking at his IMDb to make sure I know what I'm talking about.
That's right, Anchorman.
He did Wet Hot American Summer in 2001, which that's more of a cult film that didn't really make a lot of box office money, and he was in The Object of My Affection and a couple other smaller 200 Cigarettes, Cider House Rules, but those are smaller roles. I think really Anchorman was the first one that brought him back, hey, that guy, and then 40-Year-Old Virgin, and then before you know it he's leading I Love You Man and things like that. He's had an interesting career, and I think I agree with you. He makes a really positive first impression in this film, and I don't know, he's just really fun and charming and kind of funny in a way that feels obviously his lines are scripted, but even when he's playing Ant-Man, it feels very naturalistic, his comedic style.
Exactly. I think, and he's figured out what he that what type of acting he's best at. I mean, I don't even know. Has he been in any type of dramas?
I mean, I'm sure he has here and there, but like, I just said he was in Cider House Rules, but I don't recall him in that, so I don't know what kind of how big a role he even has in there. Do you think that Cher's dad knows what's going on? Because do you think he can see that there's an attraction there? Because there's a part where she's like, after the underwear dress that you were saying, he's like, "You're not gonna let her dress like that, are you?" And then he's like, "Oh, go to this." He's like, I should go to that party. Should I go to the party? You don't need me here, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, go ahead." And then after Josh takes off, he kind of does like this kind of smirky thing, like, "Oh man, there's something going on with the two of them, isn't it?" You know what I mean? Do you think he knows about it? Do you think he's cool with it?
I think he does know about it, and I think he is cool with it because he loves Josh. I mean, why would he? Him and Josh's mom aren't together anymore, but he still wants to help Josh out. And also there was that line when it was after when Cher was trying to do the Pismo Beach disaster relief, and he says to Josh, she was giving them her skis, and he says, Is this all you're doing, Josh? And Josh kind of was like, "Oh." So that to me also sounds like he knew that was the guy that Cher was talking about in his office when he was saying one of those do-gooder type. I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
I think he does. I think he has an inkling about what's going on, and I think you're right. But it's interesting. Like I said, the movie does a lot of work to earn that moment at the end. Is it the last scene during? See, I wrote down the quote, but I don't remember if that was the very end of the movie where they're talking, and she straight up says, "Josh, you are not my brother." Is that the end of the movie? Is that the final scene, or does that happen a little earlier? I don't remember exactly what the context is for that line, but the movie straight up like says, "Hey, they're not brother sister." Or you almost imagine Heckerling kind of popping out in the corner. You're like, everybody got that, like Dark Helmet style. They're not brother and sister.
Was it during the scene where he was talking about spring break and how she was telling him to just stay at their house? And he's like, "Oh, you don't want some type of brother type tagging along."
Exactly,
like,
that's
Josh,
exactly right.
You're not my brother.
That's exactly right. Yeah. See, I didn't think it was the last scene because at that point she's already had her little epiphany walk, like basically, which I love. By the way, I love the voiceover in this movie, and I love like the way she describes things, and that part where she's walking around and she's playing things in her head, and she's like, "Why am I all upset or stressing? Why am I stressing about this?" It's like, wait a minute, I love Josh. That whole thing, I love the way that all plays out. I think that's so much fun.
Yeah, she shopped all day. And it was daytime. She comes back and it's nighttime.
Well, that's her therapy. But it's also like a lot of things, and I thought when she said the line about. Because she says to Ty things about like, you just want to find a way to make when the guy likes you, he looks for excuses to make physical contact and things like that. I thought they like cut back to because there's a scene where he's like kind of like tickles her on the side or whatever, like playfully, like brother sister like messing with her type of thing, and it like everything that she says about guys seems to be true, but she's totally blind to the fact that Josh feels that way about her because I think Josh doesn't realize
Clueless?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a real parallel between, I guess I wrote between Ty and Cher parallel because they're both kind of clueless and in finding themselves in a new context. But also, I mean, I guess you could extend that to Josh in a different way because he's like a college guy and he's growing a little goatee and he's like trying to figure out himself in a way. And so she kind of needs to like fun him up a little bit and he kind of needs to ground her. So they kind of meet in the middle a little bit. He's fully in the adult world and she's kind of more of a kid. And so they kind of find a balance between the two by the end. I think which is really interesting.
Yeah, well, even in the trivia, I believe it said this, that as the movie goes on and Cher realizes her feelings for Josh, her wardrobe changes too.
Oh, yeah.
She's dressing more mature and no longer dressing in those, I think she even said, skimpy little outfits.
Well, she starts watching the news and taking an interest in things too. Be like, I care about stuff.
Well, in the trivia, the IMDb trivia that I like to read after every single movie.
She does.
I think it was even saying it was more symbolism that with her, as her feelings with relationships matured towards Josh, so does her clothing and her behavior. So it was more of a symbolism instead of just outright her Yeah, I guess you're saying the same thing.
Yeah, we are. We're just saying this. They're extensions of the same point, and that's the kind of those are the kind of details you get when you have a writer director. I think at the helm, because she clearly writes with that arc in place, and then kind of makes the decisions on the set and during pre-production and stuff to support that, to kind of fully get her thesis across on the film and have it like, you know, breathe life in the material in a different way, and making the character arcs feel more organic and such, just with like you said, subtle decisions like the wardrobe and things like that. So I don't really have that many more things to mention. I think we kind of delved into a lot of it. I did want to point out, though, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the freeway scene, which is really great, and probably one of the biggest laugh moments, I think, in the movie.
Yes. What did you want to say about it?
I just wanted to mention it and say how great it was, and make sure that I pointed that out as probably one of the comedy high points. And going back to the special features, there's one there where they were talking about like how a lot of those reactions were actually real, because they didn't know that like a truck was going to come behind them at that specific moment and things like that. And being someone who has relatives from New York in that area where you don't really drive a lot, driving to certain people, if you don't drive a lot, the freeway, the interstate, whatever you want to call it, can be terrifying like that. So I think the movie kind of captures that in a really hilarious way. Everybody's reactions and their interplay with each other, and the way the camera's kind of in the car with them from different angles. I thought that was all really well realized, and yeah, I think it does. It's probably the funniest actual moment in the movie, if not necessarily the best, but definitely the funniest.
Yeah, it was definitely, there were genuine reactions from the actors, and I don't know, I was thinking about the Dion and Murray, and just how much Dion is screaming while she's driving and like so freaked out, and then they ended up having sex for the first time after that whole event happened,
because
it
they survived.
And getting through a traumatic event like that together definitely bound them as a couple. But yeah, it was funny.
Yeah, it was great. So, do you have any final thoughts on the film? Like, do you love it more now than you did when you first saw it? Having, with the benefit of time and wisdom, I guess, if we get wisdom in our 30s, I'm still on the fence about that.
I think I enjoyed it in a different way. Back when I first saw it, I was 13 years old, and I don't know, it really resonated with me at the time, because I wanted to be that. I wanted it to be a rich teenage girl living in California. And this was actually right around the same time that I wanted to be an actress as well. So, these people were in the state that I wanted to be in, to be a famous actress. And it was just Alicia Silverstone back then, she had just come off those Aerosmith videos, and Brittany Murphy, no one had ever really seen her before, and Stacey Dash and all that. And 20 something years later, Brittany Murphy sadly has passed on. Alicia Silverstone's career is not what it was.
I don't even know what she's up to these days, honestly.
A lot of like vegan, natural stuff, from what I know. And
she's still acting. She still has credits. Oh, okay. The Killing of a Sacred Deer. I've heard of that, and I mean, that's like
she had a TV show, right?
I guess she hasn't really been able to have something stick. She has a show called American Woman, but I've heard of that, but I've never seen it, so I don't know how well it's doing. But she's in stuff. She was in Book Club earlier this year, I guess. Okay, so she's around. That's good. I think it's hard for actresses that ingenue thing has unfortunately a kind of like ticking clock to it. And I think, just 2 years later, playing Batgirl in one of the worst superhero movies ever made, I think that kind of effectively killed her burgeoning stardom in a big way.
Yeah, unfortunately. And then you have, and Stacey Dash has, gotten a lot of press lately for being part of the Republican Party, and the things that she says with them. And I don't really know. I don't really think a lot of them do anything anymore, except Paul Rudd, who surprisingly he came from he ended up being kind of like a nobody, and now he's a Marvel superhero.
Yeah. Well, spoilers for Ant-Man and the Wasp. He's lost in the quantum realm. Somebody needs to get his ass out there.
Well, a trivia bit that I actually added to IMDb is Clueless. Ant-Man actually came out the same day as Clueless.
20 years later. Yeah, 20 years exactly.
Right around. So that is my trivia tidbit that I added.
And Amy Heckerling has done stuff, but again, not much. Not like to the same impact as Clueless, obviously.
Well, Fast Times at Ridgemont High was a big deal.
Right.
During its time. I mean, I don't like that movie, but it was huge when it came out in 1982. I think she was the writer? Or she was actually the director? I think we talked about this already. I forgot.
She was the director.
Okay, and Cameron Crowe was the writer.
I believe so, yes.
Well, maybe that's why the movie doesn't have the same magic as Clueless, in my opinion.
In your opinion,
because
yeah.
Amy Heckerling only directed it. She didn't also write it too. So it wasn't her words.
And
on paper.
And she worked with Paul Rudd again in I Could Never Be Your Woman, 2007, which is like a romantic comedy deal with Michelle Pfeiffer. And then Alicia Silverstone again in Vamps, which we just watched from 2012, which also has Wallace Shawn in it. So it's kind of a mini Clueless reunion in a way. That's the other reason that we talked about doing this. They're apparently want to do a Clueless remake or a reboot or whatever the hell they want to call it now. Remember I mentioned that news to you not long ago.
Ah. Would it be a reboot with new people? Or then try to bring some of the people back?
I mean, they're calling it a remake, so I think they're just going to pretend that this never happened and start over, which I think is a mistake. Now, if Hollywood wants to push a pile of money over to Amy Heckerling's house and be like, hey, can you do this, but for kids now, not for kids in the 90s, that I would actually watch. So definitely see Clueless while you can before they remake it, and then that'll be your first impression of this brand. So can you tell the people where they can find you online and find out social media and that kind of thing?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at the Vault Key LLC. And you can also find me on my website, bebolt-bebrave.com, where you can see my YouTube videos and my affiliate sites, and where you actually can get a link to buy my planner.
Well, thanks so much again, Kai, and I'll see you in the other room since we live in the same house.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, talk to you in a second. Bye. If you're interested in joining me on the show to chat about one of your favorite films, head on over to crookedtable.com/guest. Or you can consider supporting the show at patreon.com/crookedtable. Of course, you can always find more podcasts, reviews, videos, and other movie-related goodies over at crookedtable.com. Until next time, this has been the Crooked Table Podcast, and I've been Rob.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
CROOKED.